Public Works Director Craig Gregory. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming on. And this was kind of brought up at the meeting on Tuesday.
It was.
Is that right? Tell me a little bit about this thought, the idea, and then we'll go over some of the comments that people were making on Facebook. So where are we at in this process? First things first, how did it spring up to maybe do the change at First and Cota in downtown Shelton?
So we've been looking at that intersection for quite some time, and just over the last 6 to 8 months since we actually looked at putting in a roundabout at First and Alder, and traffic flow through that intersection and increasing the flow of traffic really prompted taking a look at how we were doing downstream south from there.
Sure.
And really looking at those two intersections that are backed up to each other with lights on each of them. And if you really think about it, and you think about when you've been out there driving around, how many places do you run into two consecutive intersections where you have signals? Other than maybe in some of the bigger cities, there just aren't a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
And that one, since they went to a protected turn lane on Railroad, those lights have not been functioning very well together because they're not able to sync them together, and they're not able to work in conjunction with each other because they're that protected turn lane or turn phase of that signal throws off the one at Cota Street. So they're not working together. So you notice that a lot of the times when the one at Railroad is green, the one at Cota is red.
Yeah.
Which then what we ended up seeing was folks were just stacking up through the intersection at Cota, which didn't allow the east-west movement to function, was the main basis for taking a look at it.
So you bring up the syncing of the lights, and that was one of the main questions on our Facebook page from the folks there that were reading the story. First, who is I don't know if owner is the right word, but who owns those lights?
It is a perfect word.
Who owns the lights?
Washington State DOT owns that that intersection and the one at Railroad. It is part of the state highway system, Highway 3. It does come down from the south off of the hill and down to Railroad, and then turns down to Front Street and then out Highway 3.
Right.
So that is the state highway.
Okay.
So it is ultimately WashDOT's signal. We have been in contact with them, and they're really the ones that wanted us to bring it to our elected officials before they actually took an official look at it to see if that was actually something that the city of Shelton wanted to move forward with before they actually take an official look at whether that signal is actually warranted.
So when it comes to the syncing of the lights, and you mentioned that turn lane, there's nothing else that can be done to rectify that, to have them sync up a little better?
They have done everything that they can do at this point.
Wow.
They took a look at it. They've taken a look at it a couple of different times. Within the last month or so, they did take another look at it, went down, opened up that cabinet to see actually what the phasing was. And they have done everything that they can do with that intersection and those two lights.
How much traffic goes through these intersections on a daily or monthly basis or anything like that?
I do not have those numbers with me. We have taken traffic counts all up and down the First Street corridor, especially up towards Alder Street, where we're putting in the roundabout and that Alder Street project that is going to kick off here in about a month and a half. But I do not have those numbers with me. But
would
yes,
a roundabout fit right here at
no.
Cota? I didn't think so.
No.
So probably a four-way stop.
Is that what are the proposed?
No, it would function just like every other intersection up and down the First Street corridor. It would be stop signs on the east-west legs and open movement flow of traffic through north-south.
Okay.
So it would be the same as on both sides of Railroad and Cota. Nealon, Grove Street, it's stop signs. And really what that does is at Cota, you have the signal functioning the way that it should be. It's properly functioning at Cota. So what that does is produces gaps in the traffic downstream from there.
Yeah.
which would give you that east-west movement, and you would have some gaps in the traffic. The issue that we've got right now is it's so plugged up during AM and PM hours that east-west movement's just not able to function.
Sure. One of the other comments talking about this, cost associated with these things, I'm sure there's other additional studies you have to do, and then the bringing them down if that's the eventual case there. And what, is there a timeline you guys are working on? And
really, the timeline is on WashDOT. They have been fairly accommodating in the past, that it hasn't taken them a long time to address situations that we've brought to them inside the city limits. But I don't know an exact time frame right now. They are taking a look at that intersection. Like I said, there's a bunch of warrants. When you actually look at a traffic signal and an intersection, you look at, I think there are 10 warrants that need to be met before you actually put a signal in, or you look at those to see if it meets any of those to see if you can remove a signal. So they're taking a look at those now to see if it meets any of the warrants to actually have a signal there. And if they deem it not to be appropriate, then we would start to move forward with whether we bagged. I know at 4th and Railroad, we actually bagged those heads for quite some time before we actually did the removal of it. I'm guessing that we would do the same kind of process down at Cota before we actually did the removal.
so if there is unencumbered access for the cars to go on First Street or the state route there, how will you ensure the crosswalkability of that for folks?
That's going to be a conversation that we have to have with WashDOT. I know internally we've talked about the possibility of maybe some sort of rapid flasher like we've got on Cota Street. So that is going to be a conversation. We don't have any other means of pedestrian safety other than the crosswalks on First Street, the entire length of First Street. So that will be a conversation that we'll have with WashDOT to see if that is something that they would like to take a look at or not.
And for folks who would either turn left or right on Cota, either side, I suppose, they would just either sit there and wait for an opening or go around and find another arterial. I mean, that's basically...
You'd either wait for a break in the traffic, just like you do on any of those other streets, Grove Street, Neyland, south of there, or
there is a left turn lane going on to Cota, so
or
right, you can just
yeah, or you would make it a point to use Railroad and First Street if you didn't want to try to make that free movement. That traffic. Entering traffic on an unsignalized intersection, you would really just have to travel another block to get up to Railroad to get to an intersection where you would be protected to get into traffic.
Cota's not a hugely trafficked road.
No, it is not.
I understand it's
it's
got
some traffic.
Well, there's
no,
some
I mean
traffic.
not traffic, but
Not like Railroad.
Yeah.
No, it is not like
I
Railroad.
have actually
certainly.
been on Railroad where the light's still green and there's cars.
Yeah, the people sitting in the intersection here.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. And so then that would alleviate that, and so there'd just be the one light then in town, in the downtown on Railroad and First.
And then you've also got one at Mill Street and First.
Yeah.
But those are, there's a fairly decent distance in between those two. And just back to your question also about cost, signals are very expensive to maintain and operate.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that WashDOT would be very happy to get rid of one.
I bet.
They'll be like, we'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah. And they were very surprised when we contacted them. They said most of the time cities are asking them to put signals in to regulate traffic. They said we don't get a lot of calls for somebody asking to remove one, but they did understand the deficiency there and the reasoning why there are two lights there back to back. I couldn't even get an answer from them.
Interesting.
Looking back historically, I don't know if
and they're very
at one
close
time,
to each other.
Yeah, we're talking one block.
A block.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know if at one time the state highway turned at Cota Street and then it changed and went to railroad, further on.
Yeah.
We looked back through some of the history of it and really couldn't find a lot of information on why there would be two signals there
Interesting.
back to back. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
Must have met those 10 things that it needed in that little box.
Had a little extra in the budget.
Put one in
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Very
Why not?
interesting. Well, keep us updated on this, Craig. And
We will.
I know the listeners and the readers of the website are very concerned and they're into this and they want to know what's going to happen. So
Right.
thanks for coming on so quickly, too.
Yeah,
You're
thank
welcome.
you.
Texted him last night and he was able to come on
Oh,
this morning. So
perfect.
very cool.
Good.